Today I'm going to reveal to you why a caloric deficit is not only a complete waste of your time, but a complete waste of your money. And you're not addressing the root cause of the problem if you are doing a caloric deficit. I'm sure many of you that are watching this video right now have lost some weight and it took a really long time, and then you gained it all back 10 times faster than how long it took to actually lose the weight. So if that's you, I suggest you stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to completely debunk and demystify the myth that is a caloric deficit and why it does not work and why it does not address the root cause of weight gain. So let's get right into it. Most fitness coaches and influencers are going to have a program, right? And that's totally fine, especially if you are helping people. If you're helping somebody and you're providing somebody a service and they're paying for it, totally fine. It's an exchange of value. But if you pay a fitness coach anywhere between $1,000 for a program or even $5,000, depending on who the fitness coach is and how credentialed they are, etc., I feel like you shouldn't have to go into a program and worry about starvation. Worry about, chronically restricting yourself to the point to where you want to rip your brain out of your head. Or have such chronic brain fog that you just all of a sudden say, screw it, and then just open up your fridge and go berserk and then end up gaining as much weight on as you just tried to lose over the course of 3 or 6 months. You gain it all back inside a day or two. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how this happens, right? So of course, the ultimate modality that, or I shouldn't really even call it a modality, the ultimate approach, I guess you would say, that fitness coaches and influencers advocate for is a caloric deficit to lose weight consistently so that you can move more and eat less and get into a deficit to unlock your body fat stores, because really, weight loss is just a mathematical equation and you're just simply eating too much. And of course, if you've watched my videos in the past, it is absolute bullshit, this audacious claim, and I will link my video below in the video description to really show you a serious breakdown on the caloric deficit from a scientific perspective where I reference research and completely debunk the myth of moving more and eating less and how it dysregulates your hormones, but I'll mention a little bit of that here. So if you put yourself in a state where you're moving more and you're eating less, you are in a deficit, your body has no choice but to slow down its metabolic rate, right? Because now your body now sees less fuel coming in than what was coming in before. So your body has to physiologically, metabolically adapt to this lack of fuel that is now coming into the body and slow the metabolism down. So when this happens, simultaneously our hormones also get dysregulated. So you will experience an elevation in ghrelin, a hunger hormone, right? And you will experience a suppression in leptin, a satiety hormone. So think about just those three things, and I haven't even scratched the surface yet. You slow down your metabolic rate, you increase and stimulate the hunger hormone ghrelin, and you suppress the satiety hormone leptin. You're now hungrier and less satiated than when you started, and you have a slower metabolic rate than when you started, right? So even though you're losing weight, you're dealing with all this bullshit, you're even dealing with elevated cortisol levels, an increase in sympathetic nervous system activity, chronic brain fog, increase in ghrelin, decrease in leptin, decrease in your metabolic rate, all these symptoms that could lead to far more catastrophic issues physiologically just for 3 months worth of weight loss. And that's why fitness coaches and influencers love it, because they really don't have to put in too much work into the actual program for you to see some results, because it is basically guaranteed that you are going to lose weight if you starve yourself. But if you really think about it, you are literally paying a fitness coach or influencer money, if sometimes thousands of dollars, to starve you. Not just starve you, but slow down your metabolic rate and dysregulate extremely important hormones that are critical for physiological and metabolic function in the human body. So most people would say, well, oh, what about the maintenance process, the caloric maintenance, where you're now kind of equating the energy in versus energy out, and you're no longer in a deficit, you're just meeting your equilibrium of not passing that caloric window that you're supposed, or should I say caloric limit, that you should not exceed. If you're meeting the equilibrium between the fuel that you're burning versus the fuel that you're taking in, right? If you meet that equilibrium, you will see your hormones get regulated to some degree again. But the thing is that in this state, even though you have to somewhat metabolically adapt again, if you did a caloric deficit for 3 or 4, 5, or 6 months, the results, of course, are going to be a little bit more prominent with the decrease in your metabolic rate and with the dysregulation of your hormones. So the longer you do this caloric deficit for, depending on which program you're in or how much weight you want to lose, etc., the more catastrophic the side effects could be if you have one bad day. And I hear it time and time again. Someone's going through the maintenance process, or they're transitioning into the maintenance process and they just can't take it anymore because they are so chronically inflamed from the caloric deficit, from moving more and eating less and being in that state where they're just not getting the satiety that they need, to the point to where they say fuck it and just start eating everything in their fridge. And here's the thing, right? So this is very simple to understand. So if you slow down your metabolic rate, you slow down your metabolism, and you go ahead and you just start eating anything in your fridge, let's just say it's somewhat healthy, that is the ultimate disaster. A metabolic rate that is crashed and slowed down with way too much food that it has not seen at that magnitude in a very long time, right? So then the counter argument would be, oh, well, then you just don't do that. Well, easier said than done. When you have chronic brain fog, your cortisol hormone is elevated, skyrocketed through the roof, ghrelin is elevated, leptin is suppressed, and your metabolic rate is slowed down, and you're suffering from many other symptoms that I don't even have time to mention in this video. So, yes, okay, let's say, best case scenario, you do go through the maintenance process and you make it and you actually sustain some weight loss for some sort of time, right? For some period of time. You then, if the theory is true, of course, most fitness influencers and coaches would say it's true, you have to go back and do it all over again. Count your macros again, count your calories, make sure you're in a deficit and you don't exceed that caloric limit. You have to go through all of that bullshit again and suffer those symptoms for a second round. So it really comes down to this. How long do you want to do that for? Until you've literally had enough. I have never met a man, woman, anybody who wants to, one, wants to do that the rest of their life, or two, actually has done it the rest of their life and enjoys it. Because we want to create sustainable changes that, of course, do some things that are difficult sometimes, right? We have to do hard things to get some good results. I can agree with that. But the one thing I do disagree with is that you have to do a caloric deficit for you to see results in the long term and sustain them. If you've watched my videos on optimizing for hormonal function and getting a really good insulin response, insulin being the ultimate predictor of how much body fat you're going to lose or gain, then you'll realize that you don't even have to go through this process in the first place. Yet most people do. So coming back to the fitness industry here, this is why it's such a scam, because literally 90 to 95% of fitness influencers and coaches will tell you to do this if you join their program. And they know for a fact that they're going to get some results from you. So they will take those results and instantly put them on their highlight page. But what they will not put on their highlight page is, even if you go through maintenance and you go back into a second round of cutting or into a deficit or whatever it may be, and you finally just have had enough because of all the symptoms and all the BS that comes with doing a caloric deficit, you will gain a lot of your weight back, because once again, a metabolic rate that is slowed down with some unhealthy food, even if it's not that much, if it somewhat exceeds your caloric limit, it's going to be a disaster because you're going to be hypersensitive to that fuel. So that is what most coaches and influencers do not put on their page. They do not put in the after effects, the aftermath of the catastrophic shit show that is a caloric deficit. So last thing I'll say about a caloric deficit in terms of research, if you look at any research study that looks at a caloric deficit and you see some sort of regression where somebody starts to gain weight after not doing a caloric deficit or not following protocol, or they fall off, they will always blame the person instead of the method themselves, even though they will track some of those side effects or those symptoms in the research study, right? So, even if they tracked for serum ghrelin, serum leptin, they even measured their basal metabolic rate or their overall metabolic rate, right? Or if they also measured, cortisol levels, sympathetic nervous system activity, all the symptoms that come with doing a caloric deficit, even if they measure those things, they will still blame the person instead of the approach, right? Because that's why it's so easy to defend a caloric deficit. If somebody, has been doing a caloric deficit for 3 months, they have one bad day and they gain all their weight back, will say, oh, well, you had that one bad day where you just ate too many calories. When really, it was the hormonal dysregulation that came from doing a caloric deficit, the metabolic slowdown that came from doing a caloric deficit in combination with that one bad day. So really, it wasn't the person, it was the shit show and the disaster that is a caloric deficit. That is why the fitness industry is the biggest scam industry ever, because they know you will get some initial weight loss results if you do a caloric deficit, but they know, at least some of them know, probably not all of them, that it is not going to last long term. And when they notice that it doesn't last long term, they will never put that back into their marketing on social media, ever. So one quick disclaimer here, not all fitness coaches and influencers are bad. Most of them have good intentions and want to help people, but most of them just don't understand the science and the negative implications of a caloric deficit or any other restrictive diet that you do whenever you join their program, right? There may be some that may have somewhat of an understanding of hormonal dysregulations and certain things that may occur whenever you do a caloric deficit, but they don't really care to be open to criticism and new ideas, right? That's a small percentage. I would say most coaches definitely are in your best interest, but they just don't know what they're talking about. Whew, that was a mouthful, but I'm sure you had to hear it. So if you want to start seeing more short form content like that takes more of a hormonal based approach to weight loss, a scientific perspective that actually addresses the root cause of the problem, then click the link below in the video description to follow me on Instagram at It's Bobby O'Brien, all one word. And you can message me there if you got any questions about how I can help you lose weight consistently without counting or restricting a single calorie at all whatsoever. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.